So at this time, I would like to introduce Nelisha Firestone, CEO of Firestone Financial Group and partner with Prosperion Financial Group. Nelisha works with clients who have an incredible zest for life. They don't live for their money. They know money is a tool to help them live a more fulfilling, inspired, and healthy life. In working with Nelisha, you'll uncover what's important about money to you and create a plan to use your resources in a way that brings fulfillment to your life. She believes that when your deepest values are aligned with your finances, true freedom follows. She was inspired to be a champion of women through her grandmother's story, which I think she's going to share with us today. Nelisha is a veteran in the financial services industry. She began her career at Edward Jones in 2004 and then moved her practice to LPL in 2007, where she worked primarily out of the Coors Credit Union, providing advice to their membership base. And she joined the Prosperion team in January of 2017. Nelisha is here today to share her personal story and to provide pointers on how to plan for surprises, both good and bad, in your business. And are you prepared for the unforeseen? So as we get ready to start again, if you could please mute yourselves and turn on your cameras so that Nelisha can see your beautiful faces. And as we did during the last presenter, Julia's, we will make sure that we gather questions either from the chat or from participants as we get started. So Nelisha, I'm going to let you share the screen and take it from here. Welcome.
Great. Thank you, ladies. Stand by 1 second while I share my stuff. Hang on. Okay. Everybody see my screen? Thumbs up? Awesome.
We're good.
Well, I am so honored to be joining you today at the inaugural Women's Business Summit. I sure wish that we could all be doing this in person, but maybe another year. We're all doing the best we can this year, right? So thank you for that beautiful introduction, Katie. As she said, my name is Nelisha Firestone, and I am a partner with Prosperion Financial Advisors here in the Denver area. And we are a full-service financial planning and wealth management firm with a twist. And the twist is I work exclusively with women because I've seen firsthand what happens when single women face financial stress. So my practice is to provide you sound financial advice to empower you to make better financial decisions, thereby leading to a more joyful, stress-free life. We'll talk more about that later. But as Katie said, I'm here to talk about disruption and preparedness, specifically as it relates to your business. And I learned this the hard way. My story starts with a personal story. So here we go. Oh, and sorry, I meant to say, if you guys don't have any paper in front of you, grab a couple of pieces of paper because we're going to have a little bit of interactive exercises during my talk. So these two beauties are my lovely daughters. Addison is 11 and Eden is 9. And this picture was taken the Wednesday before Thanksgiving last year. And we were spending our day doing what we love to do. We live in Colorado, as I said. So we were skiing Breckenridge, Colorado. And this picture was taken about an hour before my life changed. So an hour before that picture, or an hour after that picture was taken on the lift, I suffered what they call in medical jargon a spontaneous subarachnoid hemorrhage, which is short for a brain bleed. And let me tell you, at 49 years old, having never experienced any sort of health issues prior to that day, it was a shocking turn of events. So in short, what happened is we were skiing. It was our first day on the mountain for the season, and we were skiing across the mountain, and I experienced a really sharp pain in my head. And I don't have migraines. I don't suffer from headaches other than the normal headache. And this was a headache like I'd never experienced before in my life, almost like a knife was going through my head. So I skied over to my husband and I told him, I'm like, my head really hurts, you know? And I stopped and I put my head in my hands for maybe 20, 30 seconds. And when I stood up, I experienced tingling at the base of my skull and hot shooting pain down my spine. So I knew something was drastically wrong. So my husband helped me get down the mountain, and we flagged ski patrol, who promptly took us over to the base at Breckenridge. And I told the doctor exactly what I told you ladies, and he knew exactly what was wrong with me. He said to my face, I think you're bleeding in your brain. And those are words that you don't expect to hear when you're 49 with two small children. So within the hour, this picture was taken shortly after that, that picture on the lift. And this is from the perspective of my family as they're seeing me loaded on a flight for life back to the city, and not knowing if I'd ever see my kids again. So this was for sure the scariest moment. And the reason I share this story is because everything I'm going to share with you today are things that came to light because of this experience. So I think as business owners, mothers, daughters, spouses, partners, whatever, however you define who you are in this life, we don't do enough as women to give ourselves a moment. So I'd like just to take a second and think about the year that we've had thus far and write down whatever you want, your 3 life-changing moments of 2020, what you've experienced, challenges, disruptions. Write down your biggest disruptions for the year, and perhaps I'm going to share mine in a second, and then maybe we can do a moment of sharing after. So I'm going to give you about a minute to do that. Okay. So I'll share with you guys what my disruptions have been, and maybe you guys can relate. Number 1, homeschooling. By show of hands, did anybody else have to go through that nightmare? Yeah, right? It's no joke. Number 2, wearing a mask everywhere, which I know we can all appreciate, right? That's been different for us, and I think I have like 10 in my car just to make sure I don't leave the house without one. And then working from home with my husband. Anybody else have that pleasure? Yeah. It's been tough, right? 2020. It's going to go down in history as a year like no other. So if you'd like to share any of your top disruptive moments, just put it up to the screen, and I'd be happy to read it out loud and share it. All right. Well, I know we've all had disruption, and it looks somewhat the same and different for all of us. So disruption happens, and we have no control over it. But what we do have control over is being prepared for when life throws curveballs. And I can tell you, after landing in the ICU for 8 days, my definition of preparedness changed drastically. Life has a funny funny way of reprioritizing things for us. So today, I'm going to share with you guys essential things you need to know for your business before life throws you a curveball. Some of this I learned firsthand through my experience, but some of it I learned through practicing my craft for 16 years. Here's the truth. Nobody wants to think about it or talk about it, but preparing for your incapacity or your death is one of the single most important things you can do for your business and your family. So if right now your plan looks like the toolbox in the upper left-hand corner, outdated, unorganized, messy, my goal today is to share with you the pressing need to update your toolbox, get it organized, easy to navigate, so that if something does happen to you, whoever you rely on can jump in, find what they need, navigate things easily, and make things run in your absence. Sound good? Thumbs up for everybody? All right. We're going to dive in here to the nuts and bolts. Okay, so essential tools for business owners. We're going to spend a little bit of time on tools for business owners, and then we're going to turn some attention to things that everybody needs to know from a personal aspect as well. So I'm very, very passionate about disability insurance. So here are the stats. This is what they told me when I got to the hospital. You know, I had just suffered this brain bleed, get unloaded from the flight. They told me a third of people never make it to the hospital. A third of people have a long-term disability for life. And then a third of people have a really bad week and move on with life. I am very, very blessed to say that almost a year after this event, I have no cognitive issues. I have no vision issues. I have no disability whatsoever. So I'm very blessed to have been in that bottom third. Did you know that every 2 seconds in the US, a disability occurs? And here's what you don't know. The Social Security Administration says half of all people that collect Social Security disability are people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. Okay? So not the elderly, not the unhealthy, it's people in the prime of their lives in their highest earning years. So for those of you that don't know the definition of long-term disability, what long-term disability is it's an insurance policy that in case something were to happen to you where you were not able to go back to work and earn a living, it can replace up to 65% of your income. So it's very critical, especially if you are a business owner and you are the main breadwinner or you're single, it's critical that you have this insurance in place just in case life throws you a curveball. It is true that there is an option through Social Security called Social Security Disability that would pay you some money. But number one, it's very hard to qualify for Social Security Disability. And number two, it's highly unlikely that it would cover all of your needs. And that's where insurance comes in to fill the gaps. So if you don't have this policy in place, your family's going to be faced with some really tough decisions. Secondarily, if you do have a policy in place, I would urge you, as your business grows, ideally so does your income, right? I mean, that's why we work. We work to grow our business so that we can profit nicely off of it. I have a client that I like to tell stories because I just think people relate to them more. I have a client that started a tech business 15 years ago. And like most startups, in the beginning, it's feast or famine, right? But once he got past the feast or famine stage, he started to look at the risks that he didn't have covered, one of them being disability. So he bought a disability policy, and you know, the years go on. 15 years later, this is a $10 million business that he's built. His income has grown exponentially since he bought that insurance policy. So he had me take a look at it, and I did an analysis, and much to his surprise, if he had become incapacitated and had to collect on that policy, it would have only paid him $4,000 a month, which is a far cry from the $300,000 he was making off his business. So if you do have a policy, make sure that that policy is growing with your income need. That's one thing that I harp on my business owners all the time. Like, you can't ignore these things. You have to know what you own. Secondly, key man conversations. It's very imperative that I'm sure there's a lot of different infrastructures here there might be single solopreneurs, there might be some people here with employees. If you have employees, it's critical that you have those key man conversations so that if you go out and get hit by a bus tomorrow, these people know what their role is to make sure the company continues to operate in your absence. A good company is one that can run without you. But you have to have those conversations ahead of time. Don't wait until something happens to make sure that everybody knows their role to play. Make sense? Key man insurance. You and your key employees are the backbone of your business and are vital to its long-term success. If something happens to you or one of your key employees becomes too sick or too hurt to work, your business could face some unexpected challenges. Key man insurance is there to ensure that your business gets paid out a lump sum of money to be able to pay for recruitment costs, temporary staffing, or any other replaced revenue, any other issues that might arise from this key person's absence. And the key person insurance doesn't necessarily have to be the business owner. It could be, your technology expert. It could be a key sales guy. It could be anybody. So key man insurance is something that you might consider. How much you need is largely going to depend uniquely upon your business. And I would recommend that you talk to your trusted advisors to run a gap analysis and find out exactly what that number is. But it's something that you might consider. Now, the next one we're going to dive into a little bit more in detail, because I think this is something that a lot of people haven't thought of and probably have not addressed in their business. But for a business owner, it's super difficult for you to think about relinquishing control of any aspect of your business, especially the day-to-day operations. But
so, Nelisha, before we go on, we have a question, and I think this is a good place to talk about it, is a lot of our attendees are solopreneurs. So what kind of business continuity should a solopreneur have in place based on the type of business that they have?
Good question. And can I shelf that and answer that in a bit?
Sure.
Okay, remind me if I don't get back to it, but I think that might be answered in some subsequent slides. Cool. Okay. Power of attorney. So since a lot of you are solopreneurs, I have a good story I'll share in a minute, but since a lot of you are on your own, you're the one that's running the day-to-day operations of your business, right? So if something were to happen to you, and we just talked about how a disability happens every 2 seconds in the US, if something were to happen to you, who's going to step in and take over your business? Most people in their estate planning documents have what's called a general power of attorney, which typically most folks will assign a family member. And that family member with that fiduciary duty is able to step in and pay bills for you, access bank accounts, that kind of thing. But is that person capable of also stepping into your business? So if you're married and your general power of attorney now, I assume, would be your spouse or your partner, are they capable of stepping in and making business decisions on your behalf? If not, you want to handle that separately for your business. And even worse, if you don't have that named, what happens is there's a legal procedure called guardianship. So what will happen is if you have some sort of incident where you are not able to go back to work for some time, the state will step in and they will assign a guardian for your business. And that person will be assigned to be able to make decisions on behalf of your business. And guardianship laws vary state by state. But nonetheless, it's emotionally challenging, time-consuming, and expensive for your family, and it can all be avoided with proper estate planning ahead of time. So I would urge you to think about that for your business. For instance, I'll share the story now. I'm going to share it on a later slide too, but I have a friend in town who owns her own business, and her best friend of 30 years owned a kind of a gift card store, if you will, kind of like a private Hallmark. And, wasn't a huge business, but it was profitable. And her friend, just like a couple of months ago, suddenly died from a rare form of cancer. So my friend, who owns a completely different type of business, stepped in to help shore up this business so she could bring it to market and sell it to get the value out of it for the deceased husband. The husband had no interest and no expertise to step into this business and take it over for his deceased wife. So, you need to think about your situation and who that might be. Operations manual. I am always shocked how many people don't have this in place. I think it's one of those back burner items that we all know that we need to do, but we just don't ever do it. Nobody knows your business like you do, right? Nobody knows the ins and outs of the daily operations like you do. And even if you are on your own and you're the only person involved in your business, that's even more critical, right? Because if you have somebody appointed to step in and take things over, let's assume that you have a disability that's not going to take you out forever, like my thing, you know? I mean, I had this brain bleed. I was in the hospital for 8 weeks, but then I was told to stay home for the rest of the year. So 2-3 months go by. If you don't have anybody coming in to help run your business in your absence, that might be a problem. So an operations manual is a critical reference tool for anybody to be able to step into your shoes, pick up the ball, and roll with it. What needs to be in there is hierarchy job descriptions, emergency procedures, detailed processes, like who do you run your payroll through, a vendor list. Like the story I just told you about the woman who stepped in to help save her friend's business for sale. She had no idea. This was a store that she had to order inventory for. So she had no idea who the vendors were. She had to go back through credit card statements of the month before to find out who had been paid. And then she called them and said, hey, you know, I see that we paid you last month, but I have no idea what you do for us. Can you tell me? So just be aware of what's a critical process for your business and put it in that operations manual so that no matter who steps in, they can have a very clear plan of who you work with and what needs to be done. I'm going to skip continuity plan, but I think that'll go a long way in answering that previous question. I'm going to come back to that in a sec. Password management. This is a huge one because everything we do is online these days, right? I mean, payroll, banking, social media postings. By show of hands, who here has social media set up for their business? Yeah, right? Almost everybody. I've got Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. I don't even know how to Twitter, but I got it. Anyway, passwords are still the default authentication mechanism for the web. More than 80% of data breaches, according to Verizon, were caused by weak or stolen passwords. So for somebody that needs to step in and operate your business on your behalf, needs to know how to access all these platforms. So whether that be a Word document that you have in a password protected Word doc, or whether you use a password app to store all these, you need to have some sort of plan to store the login information for all of these accounts that you use. I'm kind of simple. I use a Word doc that's protected by password, but hopefully you have a system. If not, get one. And share it with the key personnel that needs to know. Okay, continuity plan. 2 weeks before I landed in the hospital, I signed a new continuity plan with my partners. And it's a little eerie, the timing of that, because I had had that paperwork on my desk for months. But as we all do, we get busy, and I just hadn't gotten around to it. But 2 weeks before I landed in the hospital, I signed that. And essentially what that meant for my family was, if something were to happen to me, my business partners would pay out my family 50% of my revenue for 5 years, plus my long-term disability would have kicked in, therefore making my family whole in terms of income. A continuity plan is very important simply because if you become incapacitated tomorrow, and I know everybody's got different business structures here, but your income could stop abruptly. So you need to have some sort of continuity plan in place. That needs to be part of your estate planning documents, that needs to be done prior to an event. Without proper documentation, again, it goes through the guardianship process, which can be held up in court, delayed. Your income could stop abruptly, which if you don't have long-term disability, then all of your income goes away. Even if you are a solopreneur, it'd be worth talking to an estate planning attorney about what you need to do to protect your income in case of incapacitation. I'm going to stop there for a second. So any other questions of what we've covered so far? Okay. Trusted advisors. You guys hire people for a reason, right? I mean, typically in your circle of trusted advisors, you have a few people. You've got your CPA, you've got your attorney, you've got your financial advisor, you've got your insurance professional. In lieu of anything else, make sure that you have a list of these folks, because they're the people that you've hired because you trust them, and they know more about your business than most. So put together a list of your go-to team with names and contact information so they can help your family navigate a very stressful situation. Okay, so a few things that I think we all, regardless of whether you're a business owner or not, you all need in your toolbox. My husband, I think, knows my social security number, but I don't know. But it's important to put a copy of your social security card in your toolbox for one reason and one reason only. There are a myriad of different ways that you can collect on social security benefits, and that's a whole nother seminar in and of itself. But putting that card in there will help remind your family members to check with the Social Security office to see if they're due any benefits. I mean, y'all may not know this, but you can collect on Social Security off an ex-dead spouse. You can collect Social Security at any age if your spouse dies and you're caring for dependent children. You can collect Social Security off an ex-spouse as long as you were married to them for 10 years and you never remarried. So there's a ton of different ways that you can collect a benefit. So I would say in the case of death or disability, make sure you check with the Social Security office just to see if there's anything due you. Also, I would urge you guys, if you haven't already, go onto the Social Security website, ssa.gov. There is a ton of information on there for survivors, or in the case of disability, and you can learn a lot just by perusing that website. Also, I think all of us here are business owners, but you may have a partner or a spouse that is employed, a W-2 employee. I think it's awesome to put the human resources contact for their employer in that folder, simply because in the case of incapacitation or death, there's a lot of employee benefits that you need to know about. There's group life policies, there's lots of times disability policies that are paid for by the employer. There are stock options, sometimes 401ks. You don't know what you don't know. So get the name of the HR rep that's in charge of that employee cafeteria plan, so that if something happens, you have a go-to name and they can educate you on what's available through the employer. Digital. Like I said, we all live our lives online these days. It has been estimated, we're all sitting down, so that's good. It's been estimated that the average person has 90 online accounts. That almost made me fall off my chair. I mean, I knew I had a lot, but that is a ton of online accounts. I mean, we've got, you know, email accounts, social media accounts, Venmos, PayPals, Zelle. I mean, we've got all kinds of stuff going on. One important thing to note, which I just learned a couple of years ago, is fiduciary laws were coded before the digital age. So most state statutes don't specifically grant fiduciary access to these accounts if they're not yours. And to make things more complicated, each platform has their own terms of service agreement, meaning that if you access an account that's not yours, you could be charged with illegal computer hacking. Highly unlikely if you're doing it on behalf of a family member, but I have seen stranger things happen. So, you know, if Aunt Sally dies and you're going in to close down her Facebook account and you don't have the fiduciary power to do that, and a family member gets really mad, they could have legal ground. Not that they would, but this does get stickier when you're talking about your business. So if something happens to you and you're a solopreneur and your spouse goes in to shut those down on your behalf and they don't have specific authority to do so, they could get in trouble. There is a solution. I'm going to read this so I can get it right. A law was passed in 2015 called the Fiduciary Access to Digital Assets Act, enabling a fiduciary to carry out his or her legal duties on your behalf. So when you're talking to your estate planning attorney, I would bring that up and ask them if it's something that needs to be written in, especially for your business, because as a show of hands just indicated, we all have social media platforms advertising our business. Home and property. You guys would not believe how many safety deposit boxes and storage units go unclaimed after something happens. So if you have a storage unit somewhere or a safety deposit box at a bank, put it somewhere in your toolbox. Make a list of where you have other things stored, locations and whatnot. We have a home safe. So I have in my folder the code to the home safe because right now my husband and I are the only two that know it. So if something happens to us together, somebody's bringing the sledgehammer to that safe. And ironically, that's where my folder is. So in order to, settle anything on our behalf, they have to get inside that safe. So make sure that you provide a list of where all those things are. Financial documents. Because of what I do for a living, I'm a big fan of making it easy. And like I said, when things happen in times of stress, I'm an organized person, right? I'm a financial advisor for a living. I've told my husband what we have in life insurance, where the disability policies are, where our assets are, where, the partnership paperwork is, blah, 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 blah. But when things go south, as they did that Wednesday before Thanksgiving, his mind went blank. So for the one left standing, we need to make it super easy. And instead of them remembering a ton of things, they need to remember one thing. And that's why I'm urging you to put all this stuff in one place so that they know, oh my gosh, I've got to go there to find out all this stuff. And I would urge you to put your financial documents in there, such as contracts for life insurance, any disability insurance, any loans that you have outstanding. Are you a military vet? Put the DD 214 in there, your discharge papers, so that they can be reminded to check to see if there's any benefits through the military that they might be able to collect. Pensions. Prior to owning your own business, did you work for a company where you were subject to a pension? Is there a survivor option on that? They don't know. Put that in there. Make sure they check on it. Because without all this, you guys, what ends up happening, and I've seen this time and time again, is families are on a squirrel hunt. I mean, they are just going through file cabinets, and I mean, it could be years before they find everything. If you are diligent and you do this, it will make it so much easier and less stressful on everybody that you love. Again, in that folder, the toolbox, I assume that your professionals are the same for your business as your personal, but maybe not. If not, make sure you put a list of your people in there. They can help family members access accounts, process claims, and many other things. You're paying them, so get the value out of them. In times of stress, rely on these people to help your family save time, money, and frustration. Okay, I'm going to stop there for a second. Did I answer the question about the solopreneur, or do you want me to go over that more?
I think I'd be curious to maybe just get some insight from you on, like, what are some, like, is there anything that a solopreneur could do to, like, I mean, I guess maybe it's just more insurance based, because, like, the business, like, how, especially when you're smaller, like, how can the business really go on if you are that primary, like, solution provider within your business? Is insurance really the answer there?
Well, let me ask you, because there's lots of different insurance. So are you talking about, let's talk about a scenario like a disability where you may come back to work eventually, or a lifelong disability where your business is going to close and you just need replaced income?
I think it'd be interesting to myself and the people on the call to have some insight on both scenarios.
Okay. So let's say you were me and you had a brain bleed, which I hope nobody on this call ever does. But let's say you were me and you had a longer disability and you weren't quite cognitively able to go back to work for a year. Without knowing your business, some businesses, some income would not stop, because if you have contract business, I would assume, fees would still be coming in for some time. But the best thing you can do to protect against that would be a long-term disability plan to help replace 65% of your income, because assuming you're out for an extended period of time, and for a lot of solopreneurs, you are your business, right? So if you're not there to continue operations, I'm assuming that your income would start to dwindle after a while unless you have contracts in place. So if that's the case, that long-term disability insurance that you bought was based on, whenever you took it out, it's based on that tax return. So your long-term disability insurance is not going to diminish just because you're out of work for a while and your income is going down. So that disability insurance is strictly there to help replace income at the time that you bought it. So if you bought income, or if you bought a disability insurance where your income was, let's just say $100,000, that would provide income on $100,000. At the time of disability, when you're not working, you may not be, your business may not be earning you $100,000, right? Because you're not there working it. So that's why that disability insurance is critical, because it's protecting income from a time when you were healthy and at full tilt in your business. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and how frequently can long-term disability policies be sort of like reviewed and increased? Because obviously as your business grows and changes, your income goes up. That's our goal here, is to thrive. And
yeah, that's a great question. And modern long-term disability plans have escalators built in. So when you buy a long-term disability plan, they're going to review your tax returns, and they're going to tell you based on pay what the base rate is that they can pay you. And then they're going to build in escalators. So ideally, that monthly amount that you buy into continues to grow over time. But if you have a business that just explodes, like my IT guy, then every once in a while, yeah, you're going to need to review that. And if the escalator isn't keeping up with the income growth, then you're going to have to look at getting a supplemental plan to fill in the gap.
Thanks.
And then in the case of disability where you don't go back to work, even more of a reason to have disability insurance, because it pays out until you're age 65. That's the biggest gap I see, especially with female business owners, is you guys are really good. I should say, we are really good at growing our business and doing a lot of things, but we're not necessarily good at covering the risks. And, you don't know. The whole purpose of this talk today is to educate you on what can happen if you don't cover the risks. You don't want to find yourself in a situation where you've built this business and you are the business, and let's say you are the breadwinner and something happens to you and you've got no way to replace that income if you can't work. It's a real deal. Any other questions about that? Key man insurance that I covered is more for, if y'all are solopreneurs, I mean, you could carry key man insurance on yourself too. That would not necessarily, that doesn't pay you. So the difference between disability is disability pays you, key man insurance pays the business. So key man insurance would be nice if you were nervous that that you were going to be disabled, but not forever kind of thing. It's a way for the business to get a lump sum of money to keep operations going. Part of that could be to pay you out as an officer of the business, but it could also be to continue operations, bring in temporary staffing or whatever, or bring in a friend and pay them to help keep your business going until you're able to get back on your feet. Really, this is something that you need to talk to more in depth with an estate planning attorney or a business attorney. That's the professional that's going to write these documents for you. Okay, so I joke about a toolbox. I mean, obviously, we're not going to put this stuff in a toolbox. So where does it all go? Mine is a simple plan. I'm a simple girl. I do a folder, and I love music. So mine is called Stairway to Heaven, which is way better than Fade to Black or If I Die Young, which are both great songs, but a little bit more depressing. So I have a folder that I have in our safe at home, or you can put it on the cloud. And there are such plans, websites. Everplans is one of them. I'm not necessarily endorsing them today, but it is a great place to start. And they offer a 30-day free trial where y'all can sign up for the plan for free and just access their software to see how to organize all this information. We've touched on some of it, but there's a lot more there that you guys can plug into and see if it's applicable to you in your situation. I would say if you go the cloud route, obviously you're putting a lot of personal information online, so make sure that you are sensitive to their security measures and make sure you do your due diligence and make sure that, you know, they're using encrypted software and all that good stuff, because the last thing you need is an identity breach. So one other thing that came to mind for me after my incident last fall, we all wear a lot of hats. We're moms, business owners, daughters, spouses, whatever. I wasn't doing enough self-care. And I think as women, we don't do that. We don't take care of ourselves enough because we're taking care of everybody else, plus a business. So I'd like to take just a few minutes and think about, especially in the year of 2020 with COVID and everything else we're navigating, what are you guys doing on a daily or weekly basis that brings you peace and joy? So think about that, write it down. Self-care is super important. Take it from somebody who knows. Oops. The other thing I want you guys to do is we covered a, yeah, go ahead. You're muted.
Oh, I'm just telling you 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. Dang, that went fast. The other thing I want you guys to do, we covered a lot today, some which might be applicable to your business, some not, but I want you to put down next steps for you. What is a couple of things that we covered today that you think would be important for you to get done by the end of the year? Once you've defined your year-end list, I think goals happen 3 ways. Number 1, you define them. Number 2, you write them down. And number 3, you tell somebody. So once you come up with your list of what you think is most important for you to accomplish by year end, I want you to tell one person. It can be your spouse, it can be your business partner, it can be whomever. Goals are more likely to happen when we share it with someone and we're held accountable. And then we're here for you. This is my team. There's 3 advisors and 3 support staff on our team. We are happy to share this webinar with anyone that you think would benefit. I think it's great information. It's important information to share. So I'm happy to share that. Also, be sure to check out our digital goodie bag because, as I mentioned before, I work exclusively with women. And if you want to discover what's important about money to you, I'm offering a free 1-hour consultation to complete your financial roadmap, along with a free copy of the book Soul of Money, written by Lynn Twist. So that's our offer today. And I will be on the call tonight. I know sometimes this stuff needs to marinate. And everybody here's got like a different situation. So I'd be happy to address questions one-on-one. My email and my phone number are on this graphic. I'm here to be of assistance however I can. I hope it was helpful. Did you find it helpful information?
Yeah.
Some things maybe you didn't already know.
No, that was great. It really woke me up. I put in the chat earlier that for me personally, I always just assumed that if I went, my business went. But I didn't really, hadn't really thought about the finances and the online accounts and things like that my husband would have to clean up.
Yeah. I mean, I can speak from settling many estates in my practice. Settling estates is, if you've ever had to do it yourself, it is a nightmare if things are not, T's are not dotted, T's are not crossed and I's are not dotted. So do yourself a favor and take the time to do this, and it will make things so much easier on your family.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. Does anybody have, I put a link in the chat box, and that is a link to the slides that Nelisha presented today. They're in Dropbox, and they will be on the Library of Assets that you'll get a link to as soon as I can start uploading stuff. So probably tomorrow you'll get a link to that. Does anybody have any last minute questions for Nelisha before we take our next bio break? Anybody?
That was great. Thanks, Nelisha.
Yeah, thank you. That was really good.
You're welcome.
These are all things that I call, like, this is what grown-up businesses do. Like, grown-up businesses pay attention to their finances, and grown-up businesses have an exit plan, and grown-up businesses have, this toolbox put together. And I think that that is a measure of Nelisha, and you can agree or disagree. I think that's a measure of maturity in business, because I certainly didn't have a lot of these things in place when I first started, but as I grew and learned, I put these things together so that my business was foundationally more stable, and I didn't have to worry about things as much.
Yeah, I think that's right. And as your business grows, in the beginning, everybody's feast or famine, right? But as your business grows, different things need to be addressed. And some of us are so narrowly focused on, the day-to-day operations, you don't think about all the other stuff. And so that's why you have to rely on, professionals to help you plug in those gaps so that, if you have a sinking ship, it doesn't all go down with you.
Absolutely. And when it comes to things like continuity planning and finances, this is probably one of those places where you want to spend some money and have a professional advise you through it so that you don't have any holes. Because the last thing you want to do is give your loved ones or your business partner 75% of the information that they need. And then have them still be frustrated, because you have to remember that they're going to not only be dealing with all of this, they're going to be grieving your loss, in the worst case scenario, or they're going to be worried for you in the least worst case scenario. Let's say if you're incapacitated for a while, they're going to be stressed out about you personally as well as what's going on in the business. And so this is a kindness to anybody who is your key person or your spouse or your business partner or anybody else, because you're making an emotionally trying time for them easier to cope with. So it's not necessarily just about the business part. I mean, these people are people in your lives that are close to you. This is something we do for them as a gift to them that makes it easier, right? I know the people on this call, I know the people in this group, like we we have big hearts. We want to help people. And so this is a way that you can serve others, is by preparing for the worst case and giving them the tools that they need to succeed.
Well said. Yeah, help the ones you love the most by making it easy.
Yes. For those of you who have lost parents and had to do this kind of stuff, it's not fun. It's not fun. And the easier you can make it, the easier their process is going to be when they're dealing with their own emotions around the whole thing. So love up on your people by providing the tools that they need to help you. Help them help you. Like Jerry
Yeah,
Maguire.
you guys let it marinate. I'll be online tonight. Happy to answer any other questions, okay?